Let me just make some announcements here. We're looking for a new editor. First requirement is a passionate involvement in audio. You know, the writing skills and editing skills are probably more important than that, but it's nice if you like music and you like to listen to music and stuff like that. We pay a little money, a few $100 an issue to produce our BAS speaker, which is our journal. And the journal has been critical to our image. And so we would like to keep it going in quality by having a good editor.
There it is.
It is true what I said last time. FM radio broadcast is now using the RDS system for commercial purposes. I've seen text information for fine mass money and accident lawyers and all this on several Boston stations now. And I don't know how it all happens, whether the advertisers add it to the audio or somebody has to type it in or what, but while there's music playing, RDS lists the artist and song, but between the tunes, anything goes, whether it's related to commercials that are playing or not.
I'm not sure what you just said, Nick. What are you talking about?
We're talking in my car when I'm listening to the FM stereo. On the bottom, there's text information that usually identifies the artist and the song title.
Okay.
Even WCRB has that.
Okay.
But when there's not a song playing, they can put anything they want in that text information. And I've seen advertisements for accident lawyers, findmassmoney.com. I mean, all kinds of things. And it's not necessarily related to a commercial that's playing at that time. So there may be a commercial for, I don't know, Market Basket, and the text says, here's these accident lawyers, Nussbaum. This is new to me, and I'm trying to find out how it all happens.
Okay.
Now, there's something I'm going to recommend to the group. I got introduced to this thing called groups.io by Chris Hart, who's the president of the Connecticut Audio Society. And what it is, it's a way of creating an electronic bulletin board, basically. It's an online forum with user selectable topics, and users respond to topics, whatever their interest is. And it's presumably it would be around audio. And it costs nothing for up to 100 members, I think, which I think we qualify for. And all you need to sign up, I believe, is your email. And the BAS would have to send you an invitation to this group, and you'd have to respond. And then you'd be a member, and you can look at what's being talked about and post any insights or whatever you might have. Hopefully not flames. So I'm going to recommend that we do this as a means of maybe increasing our participation and increasing our ability to find new people to talk to and share information with. So anyway, more on that later. And finally, on the 28th of May, Saturday, Dave Hadaway is having an electronic flea market. And I would like him to describe that a little bit.
Well, a member of the society is moving away, and he essentially gave me all the contents of his basement and 2 garages, and he's an electronic engineer. Has been involved in audio for 60 years probably. And so this is from the accumulation of stuff he has all over the years. So I moved the stuff, most of it, over to my house and trying to sort it out in categories. It's being held in Ranch, New Hampshire, which is a bit of a haul, but it's a beautiful region. And typically, well, Saturday, the forecast is partly sunny, so it looks like a good day. And typically the temperature is 10 degrees cooler than in Boston. And I've posted my email so you can get directions. And there's a partial list of equipment that's there. I've got a link for that.
You want to read off some of the major items?
Well, I was in the email. I could read you the meeting notice. Not too many speakers, but let's see, meeting notice here. It's a large amount of electronic components. I would just like to give them away. Resistors, capacitors, switches, knobs, plastic bags, just goes on and on and on. Just a huge stack of that stuff. A bunch of high definition VHS VCRs, mainly for playback, since they don't have all but one of them don't have ATSC tuners, so you can't really record with them. There's a laser disc player, and I have 20 or 30 laser discs. There's some surround sound processors, the Behringer and Sound Concepts and Marantz. There's a DBX 119. There's test equipment, including a wow and flutter meter, TV and satellite signal strength meter, which is a very desirable item. It works just as well with digital. The auto precision test set Charlie Repka wanted, so that's his. Speaker wire at $1 a foot. A large pile of antenna hardware, mounting brackets, splitters, you name it. I've got it all piled up in one section. A pair of Janus W1 subwoofers, which are mine, who's been sitting in a closet for 30 years. 3 Fender loudspeakers, a single Allison one, somebody's spoken for that. Jansen electrostatic quad pod speakers, those are mine, and I've had them in the humidity control environment for 30 years and figure I never use them. JBL egg subwoofers, they're kind of cute looking. Pile of headphones, electronic parts cabinets full of parts, and I also have some empty parts cabinets. Lots of chassis for do-it-yourself work. Electronic solderless breadboard, a small one and a large one. The table saw somebody's taken. Heathkit AC supply, good for testing unknown equipment. You can bring up the voltage gradually. A Magnecord 1020 open reel tape recorder, that's mine, needs belt. Actually there's one working cassette deck, but all the rest of them need belts. And somebody could really make a very desirable unit by installing a belt on, say, a Hitachi, which supposedly was the competitor to the Nakamichi for the best cassette decks made. There's a Revox cassette deck, needs repair, so on and so on. Is that enough?
Well, you'd also mentioned that if anyone had anything they wanted to sell.
Yeah, if somebody wants to bring stuff. There's not much response so far, but if they want to bring stuff to sell, that's fine. There's plenty of space. It's out in my driveway.
And what are the hours on Saturday?
From 10 to 2. Rain date is Sunday, but it doesn't look like it'll be necessary. And plenty of parking all around the area. That's no problem. After 11 o'clock, the library opens up parking, and that's 21 spaces there, but there's plenty of parking. And I'm willing to ship some stuff too, if people can't attend. I've been selling stuff on eBay and also throwing a lot of stuff away because this person never threw anything away, and he should have.
Sounds like me.
Yeah, so I finally got down to there was a huge pile of boxes in one garage, and I thought that was all boxes, but underneath the pile of boxes, there was a Quantec wave analyzer.
Ooh.
Which somebody's driving up to Connecticut to pick up. Weighs like 30 pounds or something. There's a Hewlett Packard, I think it's 40 something LCR meter, which weighs 40 pounds. And that may not be working. We haven't checked it out yet. And there's also an H.H. Scott home entertainment system with a record player on top and so forth. But I finally reached the bottom, and there's a bunch of mouse droppings at the bottom.
Those are free.
Yeah, and hundreds and hundreds of VHS tapes, which I quickly scanned over and then took them to the dump. And also hundreds of beta tapes too, which I quickly scanned over and took to the dump. And I have to pay to dispose of VCRs and certain things at the dump. But I'm making plenty on the items I'm selling on eBay. I sold an AC power supply for $150, for example. So anyway, that's the story. There's just something of everything. It's a nice region to visit, and whatever. That's it.
Well, this also brings up another situation which everyone in the society is familiar with. Someone dies, and usually the wife will call and say,
Help!
yeah. So the debate that Hadaway and I was into was, how do we handle this from now on in the future? As Nick and I will be going over to someone's house whose husband died a year or two ago because she wants to sell and move to Florida, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, should the BAS set up some sort of procedure? I guess we started with Ira Leonard. Those of you are old enough to remember his huge conglomeration of items.
Well, mainly jazz CDs.
Yeah.
And laser discs.
Yeah.
Which we sold for the BAS, a lot of them.
Yeah, certainly did. In fact, we sold our CDs for years, right?
Right, and there's still a few left.
And there's still some left.
Well,
so the question is, can anyone come up with a plan for handling the future requests from I'll say, housewives?
I don't think there's any need to come up with a plan. Just
Go ahead.
As somebody asks, and we publicize it and deal with each case on a specific basis.
Say it again, Dave. In other words, when they
case
call,
is individual, and if people want to give it away, then that's fine. If they want to sell it, then that's fine too.
So we should, let's say, advertise it, or what do you suggest?
Well, let the members know. It's basically limited to members.
Well, you might want to expand it to maybe say like the Connecticut Audio Society, or there is another audio group, I guess, the one that we talked about, I think it was the last meeting. They're a national organization of some sort of audio folks. I
What
forget
do you
exactly.
mean, out of New York? Is New York, New Jersey, Mark Block? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not sure. It was, I don't remember it specifically, but it was brought up as an organization.
There's no national group that I know of. The recent meetings have been Mark Block and the Audiophile Society.
Right.
That's it.
Which is New
That's
York.
it.
That's New
Yeah.
York.
Yeah,
That's New York.
New York,
Yeah.
New Jersey, yeah. So, okay,
Well, there's-
so then by Hadaway is saying that we answer those calls by saying, okay, housewife, somebody may or may not come over to look at it in advance, but get a list together as best you can, and we'll advertise it on the BAS. Is that the extent of our responsibility? Because we got to remember, this just happened with J.K. Pollard, who died suddenly and left
Well, nothing's happened yet. With Scott Kent, basically,
Scott Kent, right?
Nick and I went over there, and she said, "Pay what you want," and so that's what we did.
Yeah.
So
By the
then,
way, some guy in, I guess it's Hartford area, I don't know whether it was Chris or somebody over there, picked up a lot of Scott's tapes and has been sorting through them and discovered some of Weinberg's tapes, and which David had left with Scott for years to recover. It was that crazy Mahler second that we did with Ben Zander in Symphony Hall. I don't know how many folks were there, but that was, they had paid the fee for the performance. I think it was back in like 74 or 76. And it was a zoo. There were about 10 different recording systems set up in that. And I got the tapes and managed to resuscitate them. I got one of these little dehydrator gizmos that works beautifully.
Yeah,
and
works well.
Recovered the tapes and provided a digital wave file for him to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
The real fun is he's also got, he left some stuff at Scott's, speaking of Scott's, that was DBX 700, and Scott left most of the gear in the basement. And I don't even know if I've got the gear now, because I did stop by Scott's at one point looking for those. And I've got the tapes, which are VHS, but they are using the DBX digital recording system, and I don't know how many are, what's even out there now.
Yeah,
Of the
Weinberg had
DBX
that.
processor. It's a nightmare to use because there were two units that Scott had, but his basement was not temperature controlled and they show a lot of corrosion on the outside. I haven't had the guts to open them up and look inside.
Yeah.
It may be a simple thing of just reseating boards, but I don't know. I haven't had the guts, and I'm not even sure. I have a plethora of VHS machines. I'm not sure if any of them even work anymore. It's like the cassette decks you can see behind me. I don't even know if those Sony dual deck cassette recorders work.
Yeah, the belts.
And belts.
I have VHS machines and beta and forth.
But it's a tough situation, Alvin. You're right. I did the same thing for Joe DeMarinis, who some of you knew, but he eventually died, and I went in and we inventoried. I went in with another friend of mine and we inventoried all his technical test gear, and we tried to unload some of it. And I don't know, I guess there was some miscommunication in terms it was a pickup type deal. He would not ship anything.
I never got anything.
His son-in-law. And so I guess what the guy finally wound up doing was just selling it off to some kind of wholesaler who picked it up lock, stock, and barrel and then threw it all up on eBay to sell it. I mean, most of it was dated equipment, but some of it, like the HP audio generators and HP 200s, he had a couple of them, as I recall, and some halfway decent scopes and a few other odds and ends. But you're right, it's a tough choice. And my wife is looking at the basement where I am saying, holy shit, if you die, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing they want, is to know what is trash and what is worth something.
Yeah.
Can't we have an email list when somebody dies, decide on a date when the vultures can come over? And
well, the other thing is you need an inventory as well. And I've got to get started on doing that myself, of just what I have here.
Yeah. No,
And a lot of the stuff I have is stuff nobody else would probably be interested in directly. A lot of audio tapes that were done with DBX1 on noise reduction and Dolby A noise reduction. I've got a room full of them, along with PCM recordings from the Sony PCM system on VHS.
Here, I think you've just outlined one of the problems is an inventory list. Again, I don't want to sound sexist, but typically the wife doesn't know what the stuff is.
Yeah.
And the idea of indexing it for her seems like a blur, particularly if you've got a bunch of CDs or VHS tapes and et cetera involved.
Yeah.
So you got any idea, Gary, how to handle that?
well, you just have people come over that are interested, and they will see what's there and what's trash and what's good.
So don't bother about a list.
So many recordings that I can't even figure out how I could listen to half of them in the rest of my life. And extremely valuable LPs and CDs, rare stuff, direct to disc. And I don't know if you count DBX discs in that group, but some Sheffields and things that were one-offs. And I don't play LPs, and I can't get anybody else interested in them. And when I go, my wife is not going to know anything about it. I'd just rather have the club. I'm in a local club here, come over and just take what they want.
Yeah, the other thing that you can do, and this is some things that have been proposed to me, I just haven't followed up at this point. One is your local library may be interested in some of the stuff, like the discs, especially if they're like CDs, because they can still loan those out, which is a donation of sorts. The other thing is you might be able to recruit a high school kid or somebody to come in and help you inventory stuff. And it would take a while, and you might have to pay them maybe a babysitter fee type thing to help you inventory stuff, but at least you could get some of it put in. Although the next question is, where do you put it? Well, I'll put it on a spreadsheet, but my wife doesn't know how to pull a spreadsheet, so you'd have to eventually print it out, I guess.
Are there some recordings that would be worth something if we put them on the market. I don't even know if they really are worth something. Say a Sheffield direct-to-disc or something like that.
So you can always consult eBay to see whether these things
Yeah.
are trading.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea if you have anything that's, remotely valuable, to prepare an eBay ad for it along with pictures and make it easy for whoever is going to be using your collection so they can do it properly. But obviously doing that for everything would be onerous, but you can prioritize if you want.
Well, following up on what Gary said, maybe what we should do is get the best list we can, advertise it throughout the BAS, and pick a date to go over to the housewife's home
Sure.
for anyone who's interested. Would that satisfy everybody?
Well, I think first we're gonna need to know whether the housewife wants a crowd of people.
Of course.
Taking over everything.
That's a given. That's
Yeah,
a given.
I think members need to take some personal responsibility for this before they go.
Explain what you mean.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I have the usual treasure trove in the basement of all the things I've collected over my life. And it's up to me to prepare the advertisements so that way we get a decent sale of them. Otherwise, people are going to come over, these cheap BIS members are going to come over and they'll pick through it all, and $1 for this and $1 for that. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Get out on eBay properly. No, but seriously, it's
Does
really
it matter if it sells for a lot? I don't.
One of the things I'm doing is I don't know if you can see this box clearly or not.
sure.
This is a 64 terabyte NAS drive that I'm doing RAID 10.0 or RAID 10 on. And so I've got 32 terabytes of storage. I'm taking all the music that I can find of various recordings I've made over the decades and storing them on this, A, by organization, A, and B, what I'm hoping to do, because a lot of the data that's on this already was extracted from other desktop drives, smaller drives, 4 terabyte, 3 terabyte, 1 terabyte. I'm planning, if I ever get to it, to take all this data for each organization, if it's still in existence. Some of them aren't anymore. Put them all on those little desktop drives and ship them duplicate copies of the pile. So all the recordings I've made, they can put in their archives. And I got started on the project, and then my desktop died.
Well, but that doesn't answer Ken's idea. Ken's idea is that it's our responsibility before we die
Yeah.
to get everything ready.
I think it's
That's
very
not going to
important
happen, Ken.
because the metadata, no one knows their way around. I mean, look at how much work David is going through to
Correct.
sort this out, and I don't think anybody would do that for me. So, you got to kind of take care of it.
Can we move on?
It's very dreary.
Can we move on?
Well, I just want to conclude. What I get out of the conversation is that when we get those calls, and we all get them, is that we'll tell the housewife as best she can to come up with a list. We may or may not visit, but if she's interested in having people come over one particular day during X time, to pick and choose and pay or not pay. And I think we need a procedure, because as an organization, we've been around for 40 plus years. We do attract these calls. And last time I looked, most of us are over 21.
Well over 21 in some cases.
Okay, thanks, Hadaway. At least
Before we let this go, David, this is Ed Blackwood. I'm the gentleman from Connecticut who contacted you about the Quantec.
Oh yes.
So I hope to make it up there. I've spoken to both you and Alvin in the past. And David, you mentioned also that you have all the old audio recordings of guest speakers and maybe perhaps some of the old shop talk recordings. But there were tapes that were made on DAT. Do you still have all those?
Or you're talking about
digital
Shop
audio
Talk?
tape,
Or Shop Talk?
Shop Talk, or any other Boston Audio Society presentations with guest speakers and old pioneers.
Okay, the Shop Talk, David Satz came up with a big collection, and that's available to BAS members. And there's about 20 additional tapes that I have, which Richard Goldwater has, and he eventually, if he lives long enough, will transfer those to digital, and they'll add to the collection. As far as recordings of guest speakers, in the past, I was tending to erase them once we wrote up the meeting. But I did still save up quite a bunch, so I have maybe 75 audio cassettes. And in my latest listing of the meetings, all the BAS members, I note whether they exist as a cassette recording as well. And
I need to just make it official and join and pay a fee, and see if I can get on the list somehow.
No, I can send it to you. But well, you send me an email and I'll send the list to you.
Okay.
It's on the website.
I do have
no, it's not on the website. The additional information is not on the website.
And to anybody who's interested, I do have a particular interest in any contact test equipment, in particular the noise test sets that they made over the years.
Yeah.
And I have a fair number, but I don't have any wave analyzers. But the resistor and the transistor and integrated circuit and the other types of noise test sets that Alan Stansberry, I do have a particular interest in that equipment.
Well, that was a fluke, so to speak, that it was underneath all those cardboard boxes. And I thought, what am I going to do this 35
No pun,
pound
no
thing?
pun intended on the fluke, Bart.
Right. But I was wondering what I was going to do with this 35-pound piece of tube gear, but I'm glad that somebody wants it.
Well, down here in Rhode Island, they make good boat anchors.
It works just, I checked it and it works just fine.
Wow.
No.
And maybe perhaps you can put me in touch with Charlie, who you said is going to get the audio precision system, right? Who was that, Charlie?
Yeah, Charlie Repka. Yeah, I can give you his email too if you just send me an email.
Excellent. I'd be interested to see the system, because apparently it sounds like it's got the old DOS version on it, which is the only way you can calibrate a System 1 is in DOS. So you have to have a very old version to calibrate any AP System 1s.
Yeah,
anyway, enough for me.
He worked for RCA and actually used the System 1, so I guess it's a bit of nostalgia for him. I was hoping he'd drive up and pick it up, but he's reluctant to do so. So I'm going to have to ship the darn thing with the computer, which weighs about 35 pounds as well.
So they come with options and filters. Did that system come with any options or filters, as indicated on the back panel?
The box says dual system, and that's all I know about it.
Okay.
In other words, audio and digital, analog and digital. I don't know anything else about it. So.
Okay, we ready to proceed with the main part of the meeting? Anybody hear me?
Yes.
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 Now mute everybody.
Does everybody see the title page, AXPONA 2022 report?
Yes.
Okay, good, it works.
Hey.
So I haven't been to an audio show in a while. I don't know if it qualifies, but the AES meeting, AES show in New York 3 years ago in April was the last thing I attended. I would have liked to go to CES, but they don't do audio anymore. So along comes AXPONA, and I said, I think I'll go, and I did. So this is my story. The show is held at this hotel, and it's also a convention center. Can you see my mouse pointer?
Yes.
This is a part of the convention center, which is a couple of floors high, and it wraps all around the side and the back of the hotel here. And the hotel, the convention was also held in the first 2 floors of the hotel, and the next 4 floors as well, and then scattered throughout the rest of the floors. God. Now these floors here are a open atrium. And so the floor plan is like a ring. And these floors are just a straight corridor of rooms. And like I said, most floors, only a couple floors that they exclude exhibitors. And there seem to be rooms for attendees spending the nights there spread throughout. And I don't know how nice it would be to be next to an exhibitor blasting some music, but it was a nice, clean, new, fresh place. This is the atrium here. They had, it's a modern kind of place, and you see they have furniture groupings and things like that for people to assemble and talk and trade notes and do deals. There was a lot of business deals going on. And smaller, more private groupings. And even these, I don't know, they're made of gauze, and they have wire struts that kind of hold them open as a bell, and they do a little bit of sound isolation or absorption. And like I said, it was a really nice place. I really enjoyed it. I stayed at the Hyatt Regency, which is about 2.5 miles walk. And it was a lower rate than the rooms available at the Renaissance. And they ran a shuttle between the two continuously. And I gotta say, Schaumburg seems a modern kind of town. Everything's spread out. A lot of open space between things, and a lot of shopping malls in that area, and some corporate businesses and stuff like that. But it seemed to be a lot of mall stuff. So the first day was Friday, and I said I want to go to the major exhibits on the first 2 floors in the exhibit halls there. So just walking around, here's a record cleaner, a really fancy one.
Oh.
I didn't catch the name of it or model number. There was no dealer sign or anything associated with it. I wouldn't know where I would go to find out what it was, but I'm not into record cleaners, but this looked like an impressive piece of machinery. This is a stack of Moon electronics. It was in a room which was some dealer which was demonstrating HANA cartridges, but there was like nobody around, no information about the Moon electronics or the cartridges or anything like that. Just people would wander in and out, no music playing. But I thought this stuff looked pretty nice.
Strange.
The B&W had a room, Bowers and Wilkins. They were showing off the 802D4. That's these speakers here. And their claim to fame is this tweeter is a vapor deposited diamond tweeter. And they go up to like 50 kilohertz, and they're flat, and they have very little resonance, and they're supposed to be wonderful. They were paired with these JL audio subs, but what you can't tell from this is that this is not really a back wall of the room. This is a curtain drawn across the back third of the room. So these things are out, way out from a wall, way out from sidewalls, and the sound was actually kind of lost. As I point out here, they played jazz and non-challenging music, so it's kind of hard to judge. They did sound clean for what they did, but this was a Parasound amp. It's a stereo amp, just on a table on display. There's other stuff around it, but there were no people there. It was just laid out here. Look at this. And it's a pretty heroic construction. It's designed by J.C. Curl, who had a hand in some of the early Levinson stuff and later Parasound stuff. It's good equipment. This was the first big room I visited. These are Estelon speakers, and these guys are made of a cast resin. This whole thing is 2 pieces, I believe, that are clamped together to create the one enclosure with a pair of woofers down the bottom here, high bass, mid-range, and a tweeter, and driven by Krell Electronics, and they sounded pretty good. This was at the end of a hall, and maybe they had less foot traffic or whatever. There was maybe 6 observers, customers, whatever in the room, but when the music was playing, nobody talked. They produced a really nice soundstage, and they're really serious. But again, this room, like the others in this day one stuff, this room is like 40 by 50 by 20 feet high. These are big rooms, and these may be big speakers, but they still couldn't totally drive the room. I mean, so these are $160,000 a repair. And just for your information, these cables are $190,000 a pair.
Holy shit.
What?
Yeah, they had Gaga cables around everywhere, and you know, I don't go for that stuff. You don't need that stuff, but this is what a high-end show is about.
So I just apropos of our previous discussion, I rest my case. You've got to document these things.
Hmm.
Well, you know, it was interesting. The first day, Friday, you go to the room and there would be a placard on the outside that would say Estalon Crow. Okay. You go inside, there were a few brochures, and, you know, looking at the brochures, I figured out which model these were, and, you know, the Krell and so forth. And so at the end of the day, I had taken a bunch of pictures. These are pictures I took. And I went back to my room and sat down, and for 2-3 hours, I wrote down my notes and tried to look up stuff, and not much information was given to you. On the second day, there was taped up to, I think, every door of every hall, a list of all the equipment and prices. And that's where I got the prices for this stuff. But that information is not available on the web. And I really wish it was. It would have been much easier to research these things and look at prices and dealers and, you know, whatever. But so, yeah, I document some stuff where, you know, I think it makes a crazy point. The next, I went to the Clips room. This is the Clips Jubilee, which is, in theory, Paul Klipsch's last design. It's like a Clips horn, but it's only two ways. It does not need a corner. That's wrong. It needs a corner, but it has wings on the back here. This is a grill cloth that you can see through. What you can't see through, but there's a false corner, but it only comes out like the width of the speaker, which is about 4 feet, by the way. It contains two 12-inch woofers and a mid-range tweeter horn. The original Clips horn is 3-way, and there are good reasons for that, and why they went this way, I don't know. Here's a view from the side. You see this giant driver here. The horn throat is, I'd say, 2 inches. And I don't think, you know, it works that well to have a very large diaphragm driving a small aperture, because the multiplication factor of the sound pressure in the throat leads to intermodulation distortion and all kinds of harsh things. It was good sound, but I'm sorry for Clips, it had lumpy bottom and missing extreme low bass. Oh, I have a sound tool app on my phone, which I only got, you know, a week before the show. And I would look at the spectrum of most of the speakers. I went, and this had a big dip around 300 hertz. And the bass was gone below 60 hertz. People seemed to like it. They were playing like Steely Dan and the Doors and things like that. And the guys were kind of bouncing around. But, you know, I tell you, I was not that impressed with the sound. They're only using a couple of watts. I got to say, they're efficient as heck.
Well, they're folded horn, which was typical of Paul Klipsch.
Of course.
Very efficient, but yeah, it doesn't sound like he was on his ears at the time.
Yeah.
Because the K horns sound much more impressive.
They're okay. They have very similar problems, I got to say. They must absolutely be used in corners,
Oh,
a
yeah.
minimum of 6 feet deep. Solid corners. I know I built some and I experimented with short fabricated corners. They just did not cut it.
No.
So There was a whole room devoted to headphones and in-ear monitors and headphone amplifiers and stuff like that. And I found the Etymonics guy, which is this guy on the left here, and the West Tone guy were sharing a booth.
Huh.
And we had interesting discussions
I'll bet.
about earphones, in-ear monitors. They make up to a 7-way in-ear monitor, and they use these little tiny transducers. But the curious thing is that there's no crossover in there. The crossovers inside are acoustic, they said. And to me, that means that the tweeter is still seeing the full range signal, as is the woofer, if you want to call it that. And that seems to be the wrong thing to do. I think you really want to divide up the frequency spectrum in even a headphone. But anyway, they were friendly. We talked for almost half an hour about this stuff. Etymonics still
You
exists.
have head steering systems.
I didn't see any. Etymonic is still in business, but Killian
Yeah.
Mead is no longer with them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Meet Killian.
Mead Killian.
Sorry. Yeah. One of the headphone amplifier manufacturers was trying to talk to me about buying this unit here, which incorporates acorn tubes. I thought acorns were gone, but they said we can put anything in there that you want. And, you know, so I could get MOSFETs or FETs or, you know, bipolar transistors or acorn tubes or other kinds of tubes. Not my thing. This was the Griffin amplifier series. This is like a CD player. This is a preamp. This is a power amp. This thing is 2 feet wide, almost 4 feet deep, about 18 inches high, and weighs 450 pounds. It's rated at 200 watts class A, and it's $99,000 per chassis. You can get a mono version that's more power. But this was not connected to anything. It was just sitting there. And
They probably didn't dare.
yeah, it's impressive as heck, but, you know, boy, they really need to put it to work, if you ask me.
Looking at all the condensers, which appear to be on each side, I'll wager just the surge when you first turn it on requires at least a 30 amp to 60 amp power circuit.
I don't know about the amps, but it takes 220.
Yeah,
It's like
okay,
a
bingo.
farad of capacitor in it.
Huh?
I think it's got a soft start charging circuit.
Yeah, that would make sense.
You're going to blow fuses no matter what.
Yeah.
It was, you know, again, heroic construction, but over the top.
Yeah, who needs a forklift to move it?
Yeah. I'm sure it's delivered in place. I mean, nobody, no, UPS isn't going to drop that off.
Yeah,
Even if they did, that's where it would stay.
Go through the floor.
that's why it's 100K. Pays for the crane and everything else that you need to load it in.
Yeah. So this was a room, again, it's a big room, like 40 by 50 and 20-foot ceilings. And it had these Stenheim Ultimi 2 speakers, and it's a pair of 12s, a pair of 6s, and a dome tweeter. It's a ported enclosure, and they're very efficient. The story is they use musical instrument drivers, but they tune them a little bit and you know, make sure that they don't have a lot of distortion and stuff. So they're efficient and they sounded pretty good. They've did the right things with the crossover, their passive crossovers, but they were a little lost in the room. They didn't crank them up super loud, but I could tell that if they tried to, they would probably distort a bit. I mean, you just can't drive that big a room with even these speakers. And unfortunately, these are big tube amplifiers, a couple hundred watts per channel. I bet they needed more. This is from here down to here is the Wilson WAMM, W-A-M-M. It's a wide area monitor something. This is the first Wilson speaker. And it's a serial number 1. And this was bought from the original owner by Wilson, who put this on display. And it's a curious speaker. These are apparently little Braun monitors. And this is an electrostatic tweeter panel and a pair of B139 woofers. And behind here in this box here with this giant cone. It's like 21 inch. There's a 6-foot high subwoofer against the wall. And they got, 2 of these speakers and 2 subs, and it's driven by Krell amps. It sounded pretty good, but it was weird going from the mid-range to the tweeter. It didn't quite come together. So these are the amps they use to drive it. These are KSA 200s, and these are D'Agostino. D'Agostino, I dropped my D'Agostino, is Dan D'Agostino, who founded Krell and left to create his own company. So there's an awful lot of watts here to drive these things. It was not outstanding sound. In another room, also with tables, this one is more of the records for sale stuff. I came across this guy and some others from the Chicago Audio Society, and they were really nice people. We talked for like half an hour, and they face the same problems that we have, and they have the same opinion about trying to attract younger members, newer members. I sort of quote him off to the side here about the kids wanting the headphones, and they don't know anybody in hi-fi, and there are very few hi-fi stores around now, much less than before. So they got no place to learn about, hi-fi and high-end audio. So I think we're in the same boat, but I enjoyed my time, and they gave me some tips of good things to go see. And they were right too. I met this interesting fellow. He makes acoustic treatment panels, and he's thought it out. This is a panel, and the cover art, you can get whatever you want printed on it. It's a cloth cover. Behind is a frame that holds rock wool. And behind the rock wool is an MDF panel, which he has routed out to be a diffuser as well. So it kind of combines absorption and diffusion. Though if you put the diffusion behind the absorption, you're going to be trying to diffuse more lower frequencies, I would say. But anyway, they were on display, but there was no sound to listen to them or test them with. You put your ear against them, and they seem to absorb quite a bit of sound. So there's that. And they're a couple $100, not terribly expensive. This stand is actually a subwoofer. Behind right here is an 8-inch subwoofer, and here's an amplifier module, and the back end is open, and so it forms a dipole subwoofer to hold this Magnepan LRS, which is $1,000 a pair. Really popular. Magnepan is back ordered 6 months on these things, and it really adds a good low end to the Maggies. And I thought it was pretty neat. It's not expensive. It's like $500, something like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I stopped by the soda display, state of the art. They're at the turntables, and this is examples of some of the machining that they do in their turntable bases and bearings and things like that. Really high-end fabrication. Again, more. Wow. This was a bearing demonstration. You could turn this thing and it would just keep on spinning. It didn't slow down. This is some of their commercial products here.
What gets me is with all these people that are developing all these incredible platters, there are very few actual linear tone arms out there. And by God, my experience many moons ago with the Rabco tone arm, there's nothing quite like a linear tone arm. They really do sound better than an angled tone arm.
Yes, sir. Yes, they do. Here's one.
Bingo. Looks like a modified Rabco.
It's a Rabco reborn or reimagined.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It may be here, or this might have been the integrated model, but this thing is driven by a little ARM printed circuit board with a computer on it, and it drives servos in this thing, and that blue light is the optical tangentiality detector. The Rabco, I think, used contact switches.
Yes, and they were open air, so eventually they corroded and wouldn't work.
Right. So this is done optically, non-contact, and it seemed to be the right thing. I listened; it sounded really good. There are controls. I don't remember, again, this might be like the remote controller or maybe here to drive the arm in and out so you can do queuing and cue the arm up and down. And there's a sled onto which the cartridges mount. So it can handle all the standard kind of mount cartridges, no problem.
Mhm.
There are accessory weights to be able to handle heavy cartridges or light cartridges. And it just sounded fine. I listened with headphones to it for, 5-10 minutes. And I was very much impressed. And this is a boutique operation. These guys are like starting up. I think he was in audio a long time ago, and he just decided he was going to do this. And it was nice. And they were nice people. They gave me some good tips on what to go see too. So yes, there are tangential tone arms out there.
And few.
I might have seen 2 in the whole show out of probably 150 turntables. By the way, out of 150 turntables, and that would be 100 at exhibitors, I saw maybe 10 in use.
Wow.
Nick,
Do they have any kind of a price guesstimate for this?
I think it's like $4,000, maybe less. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Nick, does this fellow automatically go to the lead-in groove, or do you have to position it and let it lower down?
You have to position it at the lead-in
Yeah.
groove. At the lead-out groove, it lifts up. But the startup is manual, if you will. So, in that same room, I found some of the, well, I call it cuckoo stuff. This is a company called AdPower, and he's got these blobs. Here's a blob. It plugs into the line, and he had it kind of like a isolation strip or whatever. And he has different sizes, longer ones and shorter ones. And he had several of these plugged into this isolation strip, claiming that it cleans up the power. And you read some of this stuff here: re-reference components, lower power supply voltage, re-reference the audio signal, boost system signal to noise, 0.5 to 1 dB. He could not explain to me in a coherent way how it works, what he accomplishes. But I got to say, I saw several exhibitors who had these products plugged into their strips on display. They're using them, probably just promoting them. I don't know if they stand behind those. I don't know. Not for me. The next big room I visited was an Auralic, AURALIC room. Auralic Electronics makes DACs and streamers and electronic digital interfaces and stuff like that. But what they had were these ATC speakers. And ATC is a British company, and they make monitor speakers, and they also make professional like performance loudspeaker equipment stuff. And this is a middle of the line. This is a 12-inch woofer, a 3-inch dome, and a 1-inch tweeter, and they're powered, and they're like $45,000. And they did some things very well. They had bass drum, really gave you a kick in the chest, but the extreme lows were missing. This isn't, again, a 40 by 50 kind of room, and this is just not enough speaker to really drive that room. But it sounded, whatever they put through, it sounded pretty good. This is that room. These are those 2 speakers, and you'll note this is the diagonal of the room. So this is close to a wall, and I think this is close to a wall because the corner, there's the line right there. So they got some room reinforcement here, but I thought it was interesting they chose to use a diagonal. I asked them why, and they said it just sounded better. So good on them for thinking about that. These are Magico speakers. These are the M6. I believe that's the new one. And this is a Luxman amp. These were new this year. It sounded okay, but it didn't hang together. It didn't sound like a real instrument and real spaces and stuff like that. This was a sort of smaller room, and I had more hope for that, but it didn't come alive.
Did it have like a hole in the middle in that bigger room and that spacing?
No, that, let's see if I can get back there. These are maybe 10 feet apart. And this room is not a 50 foot, 40 foot. This is maybe a 20-foot room, a slightly smaller one. So they were closer together than the usual pair of speakers that we saw, the Estelons, for example. So they had a more of a chance, but somehow, I don't know, they didn't impress me that much. Maybe with more careful placement, maybe with more power. These are only 150 watts a channel. Maybe with more power, they would have sounded better. Don't know. Oh. We're not going back.
No, you're going forward.
I don't know why
So,
that is.
I have a comment, please. Just all these speakers are nothing but boxes with all the drivers put on the front of the box and aimed at your face. Does nobody out there know anything about the spatial nature of sound?
Yes, several of the speakers here, and I did not note which ones, do have rear-facing tweeters and a tweeter level control for the rear-facing tweeter to bring out or restore whatever room ambience, to flatten the power response in the high frequency range. I don't remember if these guys did. I didn't think they had a lot of space to them, frankly. This is one of the, you see this box here on a stand. This is one of the few rooms which had absorption, acoustic absorption to it. This is not a first reflection point. This is just an absorber stand. Here's another one, an absorber standing in the room. And I, hope they did some listening tests or had some plans on how to set it up, but I'm just not impressed by these.
Were there any MBL displays in there?
Yes, we'll get to them.
Okay.
This is a von Schweikert, and what you don't see behind here, yes, there's a tweeter in the back. There's like 3 knobs in the back, which are auto formers for the tweeter level, the mid-range, damn it, the tweeter level front, the tweeter level back, and the mid-range level, so that you could essentially tune this any way you want. And boy, that crossover must be expensive. This sounded okay. The drivers are made of ceramic, and that was one of the things that several of the high-end manufacturers, the Estelons, for example, have ceramic drivers. And you have to be careful with those because you can literally shatter them if you feed them the wrong signals. So, let's see if I can get this right here. No. Okay.
What the hell are the amplifiers? They're in the middle of the room?
These?
No, in the previous slide. They were driving those.
Big VTL tube amplifiers.
Holy crow.
There are 250 to 300 watts a piece. And these are relatively efficient speakers.
Yeah.
I am not a tube person at all, and it saddens me to see this kind of thing. These are very expensive, I'm sure, and it's just a complete waste of money, if you ask me.
Well, the only real advantage to tubes is their distortion levels are harmonic. The transistors generally are odd harmonics, which sound abrasive if they're not designed properly, but tubes have even harmonics, which sound very pleasant. And
yeah, but
a lot of people like that sound.
Your typical tube amplifier suffers from several percents of distortion at any kind of reasonable power. If you look at Stereophile, John Atkinson's test of tube amps, whereas transistor amps typically 0.05, 0.01%, much less, even if it's anharmonic or intermodulation or whatever. I think those are in the noise, whereas the tube distortion is not. And the tube amps typically have high output impedance, which means they're going to interact with the speaker and change the frequency response there by substantial, a few dBs in some cases.
Yes.
So next I visited the focal room. Again, this is pretty big, and this is just a freestanding wall here, maybe 2/3 of the way into the room. They had this diffuser on the back. Yay, that's a good thing. They had these in-wall speakers mounted against the wall. That was okay. They played those. They played loud. These are subwoofers, and these are mids and tweeters, and it sounded okay. But the big draw was these focals, which is their room type speaker line. And these sounded very good. They made a lot of bass. They're driven by these NAIM amplifiers. These things are 750 watts a channel. And when they played lots of low bass, the room lights dimmed. So I don't know if they had enough power coming into these things.
Yeah.
Most giant power amps want 220 or 240 volts for the input, so they reduce their current load. But I literally saw these things dim the lights. And these are those amps, and yes, these are sculpted. They go in and out, and these seams go up and down, and they cost $240,000 for a pair.
Wow.
I don't know. Looks nice, but way out of my league.
They're still the only amps that can drive Lynn isobarics.
I would debate that.
Famously. All right.
Wimberg, again, a ceramic driver thing. This is a smaller speakers, only about 4 feet high. It sounded very nice. It sounded a little strained when they tried to play loud music. Jazz and classical, it was really sweet. Dynaudio, similar kind of story. This is like an 8, a 5, and a 1. I don't remember what the amps were. Octave Research, I guess.
Oops.
They were not enough speaker for the room. They sounded very coherent, very clean, but they couldn't do low bass. But I think very highly of them. I know Dynaudio drivers have very low distortion. I came across this fellow, Matthew Bond. He's an exhibitor there. And it turns out he was the designer of this speaker wire. And I don't go gaga over speaker wire, but I happen to pick up some of this stuff from his first incarnation. He designed it in the 80s, and it was buried. He worked for Tara Labs, and they decided not to market it, so they buried it. And he finally got out from under them, and it has the characteristics of being, technically one of the best wires around in terms of its lump parameters. Like I said, it's the lowest inductance around, but it's expensive. It's each of these, this bundle here is 36 wires. You come to 18 wires per side. It's pure copper. It's silver plated. This is Teflon insulation. There's a little nylon braid that runs all across these things, woven, and it holds these things in a ribbon. But it's interesting, the ribbon is not stiff because the wires can slide against each other. So you can position them easily. I tell you though, these are monster terminations, not monster brand, but they're huge because each of these is like 4 gauge. We're not fooling here. This is real wire.
Okay, but it ends in a stupid spade lug.
Well, what I did with mine is I have a banana that can tighten on a wire. So I tighten a banana onto that. Because all my wires are bananas. I don't want to deal with spade lugs. But these are monsters. These are like
it still is a spade lug.
Yeah. Those you can hook up to your car battery.
Yeah. These are rated for 100 amps, continuous, 500 amps, peak.
Jeez.
So, you can jumpstart your locomotive with that. And here he is, the man himself on the right. So it was nice talking to him about that. These were my favorite speakers.
Yeah, linear.
The Credo Cinema LTM. I don't know why Cinema, because I wouldn't think of them in terms of AV or whatever, but they're like what I like, line sources here. And just to jump over here, this is a side view. This is a 12-inch sub. This is a 12-inch sub. There are 2 more 12-inch subs on the other sides of this cabinet, so that they're opposite facing, but they're not one back against the other. So they don't exactly force cancel, but they mostly force cancel. And these have crossovers. They're driven by these monoblocks. These things really made the sound that I was looking for. And yeah, they cost a lot of money, but I looked at the spectrum, several different kinds of music with my little audio analyzer on the iPhone, and they had no obvious deep dips or peaks or missing spots. They were just smooth. And man, they could put out bass and they put out clean highs. I was most impressed by these. My favorite.
So they sound more near field because of the line array, and were their center distances proper for effects comb filtering. And what was the height? I think the inverse square laws, you square the height of the column. So let's say if it was 10 feet tall, it would only lose 3 dB per doubling of distance instead of 6 dB.
Right.
So I'm curious how deep the room was, and if they actually had it roll off. Some people have columns that are too tall, so there's a slap back that comes off the back wall. So I'm curious how big the room was in here. But
okay, this was a big
line arrays. I do have a lot of interest in.
Okay, this was a big room. These speakers are about 6.5 feet tall. They were close to the back wall. This was a curtain against the back wall. Okay, these are 1 kilowatt monoblocks. Each speaker is driven by 1 amp. Like I said, the crossover is down in the base here. And yeah, you're right about linear line source speakers. They drop off at not as fast as a distance from a point source. And there was no room treatment other than this curtain that I'm aware of. And they still sounded great. The
distance from the speakers to the wall behind you, not the wall that's behind the speakers. This was another large room that this was in?
Yes, I was about in the middle of the room where the seats were. It was about the middle of the room, and going back maybe a third of the distance there. So these are like 12 feet apart maybe, and the distance to me was about 12 feet, something like that. And there was another 15 feet behind me to the rear wall. And the room was easily 40 feet across, side to side. And again, the 20-foot kind of ceilings, huge ceilings, bare, they looked like industrial. These speakers brought it. They were no fooling speakers. This is the monoblock here. So that was the end of day one. Like I said, I went back to my room and I spent 2-3 hours making notes and looking at my pictures and stuff like that. The second day, I went to see all the floors 3 and above, wherever there was vendors, exhibitors. There was this room with good sound and a line out the door, and I actually went around the floor. This was on the 3rd floor, and I went around that loop, and I came back, and there was still a line. So I got in a line, I waited. It turned out these are Paradigm speakers, a new series, the Founder. Not terribly expensive, but they sounded good. This is like a live-in person room. It would have had a bed and a dresser and all that kind of stuff in it. So it was maybe 15 by 20 total. And these speakers filled it, and they sounded real good. I was impressed. This is the Malborg Warsaw speaker. It's a mid-tweeter mid with a subwoofer built in. And this subwoofer is like 7-inch, and these are like 5-inch. And this is a ribbon with an open back, so it's a dipole ribbon. And you see the reflection here. This thing is machined out of aluminum. It had not much bass, a light bass, and they only played like jazz. I'm not sure the guy, there's like one guy there when I was there. I'm not sure he understood it, my asking for some, symphonic classical music or whatever. But so a lot of people thought this was good, but I said, they're not challenging themselves or me or whatever. And this is what's on the sidewall. This is like an inch thick. It's done at the first reflection points. And this is typically what they had in every room. Just the first reflection point treatment, no bass panels, no bass traps, nothing else in the room, a rug, but that was it. Usually window curtains, which they drew closed, but that's light stuff and not much sound absorption. The tip I got from the Chicago Audio Society was this. It's called Tiger Fox. And you can read this thing here. And basically, the thing to take away from it, it's a portable audiophile listening room. And man, it is that. This is it. There's a floor mat, which is down here, that tells you how to install this, which is a partition. This partition folds. Here it is rolled up, in fact, how they ship it, okay? The partition unfolds, and it's made out of sound-absorbing stuff with some backing, and you see that it's kind of slat-oriented. And what it does, it creates an elliptical space here. And there's an opening at this end. You position two speakers, and on the inside are marks, and inside on the floor here are marks of where you have to position the speakers. And you position a chair in here, and there are marks to position the chair and to align your ears to the other focal point of this ellipse. And when you do that and you work your way past these speakers, here is what it's like from the inside, you get an amazing surround sound. You get an amazing listening experience out of this because this sound is focused to your ears. And so you got to manage your up and down so that you're right in the right plane. And but this was the most impressive thing for short money. It's $479, I think, like that. And when you came into this room, there was a line out the door to get in. So I waited, and you came in and you filled out this survey here, and they fed these to the guy running the demonstration. One at a time, you gave them information about yourself, your email, and your interests and hobbies. I don't know. And you chose 3 pieces of music. You would play 1 minute of each of these pieces of music, and then it was on to the next guy. And I chose Thriller by Michael Jackson and some jazz vocal by some girl I don't remember, and a piece of symphonic music. I think it was Mozart. And they all sounded wonderful. And it was a wonderful spatial ambience around this. It was maybe a little more than natural, but it was really nice. It was impressive. So, the club might be interested in asking these guys to ship one of them here. Here you see the floor mat and how to, the installation instructions, how to set up this partition here. The club might be interested in owning one of these or having one sent over for a demo, because it was really astonishing what they accomplished with this.
Gives a whole new meaning to a man cave.
Yeah. It's a one person thing. I mean, this is a small area. It's maybe 4 to 5 feet deep and 2.5 feet wide, but man, it really focused the sound. I thought there was a subwoofer in there, but there was not.
Do they supply the speakers?
No, they don't. It's whatever speakers you have. These are low-endish JBL monitors. These are 5-inch woofers. They have DSP inside and digital amps, and they cost about $200 a piece.
Who's our ambiophonics man?
Glasgow?
No.
No, these are just stereo speakers. It's not. It gave you a feeling of surround, but it's created by enfolding all the sound out of the speakers back to you.
Yeah.
So I was very impressed. I thought it was great.
I can remember back in the day, there was a company building what looked like an overgrown egg. And it had speakers in it. And it was a remarkable thing to sit in because you were completely isolated from your surroundings. It was foam lined.
The egg chair, yes.
Yes. And the sound in there was very impressive, but you were the only one who could listen to it.
That's right.
This is not for group listening.
Right. There was some sound that you could hear on the outside, but
Yeah.
there was leakage sound, obviously. So,
God.
but this was really impressive for short money.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt just a second?
Yep.
Today's New York Times has an article about the quietest room in New York City, and it's specially built for a listening room, and the sound level is 13 dBA. And it's a totally isolated room. Might cost a few bucks and no windows.
One wouldn't think there
Just
would
thought I'd
be.
mention that.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
I've heard, I don't know if this is urban myth. I've heard that Microsoft has a room, I believe it's somewhere in Seattle, where they achieve minus 20 dBA. I don't know if this is true.
Sounds like that mountain enclave in Colorado where the Air Force used to have their hideaway.
Yeah, Cloud Mountain or something like that.
Yeah, I forget what they called it, but it was supposedly the strategic location. It would take even a direct hit from a nuclear weapon wouldn't penetrate the room.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, that's-
Ralph Glasgow was the one I was trying to think of.
Yeah. I don't remember if he was demonstrating. I don't think he was an exhibitor under his own name. I got to say this, to my knowledge, and I did not see every exhibit. To my knowledge, this was focused on 2-channel. I don't remember seeing any surround sound or multi-channel stuff. I don't think I saw any TVs or video in operation.
Wow.
So this is a high-end audio focused show. And I think that's good because I'm not that interested in the other stuff myself. So this was an odd speaker. I came into the room and the speaker was playing. This is a cube, which has a horn. This is a horn on the face, and this is the axis of the horn. And has a sub here and a sub here. And this is a ribbon tweeter. And these are two semi-cylindrical diffusers or waveguides, or I don't know what. These are moderately expensive. They're from Cyprus, if I remember correctly. And like I said, I didn't hear them because they weren't playing. And there were several people in the room milling around and talking, but I decided not to wait. But it definitely have quite an image here. This was the Jbl Room, and if you get Stereophile, you may know that a month ago, Stereophile reviewed JBL's latest monitor speaker, which is a 2-way or 3-way, depending on how you look at it, with a 15-inch woofer and a big horn and stuff like that. And I was very surprised that JBL was not showing those off. Instead, they had the small, a new version sort of the Century, but it's only a 2-way with like a 5-inch woofer, and these HDI 3600, which have 3 woofers or 2 woofers, a mid and a horn tweeter here, and they sounded pretty good. They sounded very dynamic. They maybe didn't go quite as low as I would have liked, but like I said, they sound punchy, but they're not cheap. They're not cheap.
West Coast sound.
Yeah, but it's more refined. I mean, I've owned L100s of the original series, and I know their faults quite well. These do not have those faults.
They've gotten better at measuring things, hasn't everybody?
And they've gotten better about making things. I mean, they make more quality products now.
Yeah.
The Stereophile thought pretty highly of those new JBL monitors, which are only like 16,000 a pair. I mean, that's short money compared to some of the big speakers here, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So,
So you get a choice. You either buy a gas guzzler or you buy a loudspeaker.
yeah. This was the Jbl Room, is driven by Levinson Electronics.
Hmm.
Jbl and JBL and a lot of companies now are owned by Harman Group. So
Oh, God.
saying it's Jbl, that's just a name now. Harman is
Just bought everybody
very
out.
much in charge of the technology that's used. These also are ceramic cone. They take an aluminum cone and they heat it up in reducing atmosphere to basically turn it into alumina, which is sort of a ceramic. And so the cones are very light and very responsive, and these really sounded great. And again, 17K, but not that much compared to some of the big boys, you know.
Hmm. God.
Hanawa, our friends from Marlboro
Yes.
were there, and they had, again, these are all these, the rooms on day 2 are all smaller, 15 by 20, whatever. So this is a rear wall with the windows and the closed curtains in front. And this is what we knew as the Hanawa speaker. Well, now each of these comes with a subwoofer. I believe it's a sealed box. It has an amp inside, and the speaker amplifier controller does DSP for these two together. So these are married now together with DSP, and they sounded quite a bit better than the original pod speaker alone that we heard when we visited Hanawa. And these don't do extreme loud levels or extreme low bass, but it's an improvement. And you know, I want to hear more. These, again, are way out of my league. I think these are like $100,000 for the set, pair of speakers, pair of subs, and their amplifier, preamplifier controller combo. But they did sound pretty good. So
What the hell does that turntable do? I'm looking at the turntable to the left of it, and it's like, oh my God, what do they have? Dual platters that go in opposite directions or something?
no, I saw one of those. This is not that. This is the Hanawa turntable. It is a serious piece of gear.
No kidding.
As far as I know, this is one platter and a plinth that goes through it.
God.
This is their tone arm, and they have their cartridge in here, which is an ultra low impedance moving coil cartridge. It's like 0.5 ohm, ridiculously small signals. And so you need this interface box in between it. But the thing about this cartridge, which has been nicely reviewed by Stereophile, is it tracks at 0.5 gram.
Jeez.
That's the lowest tracking cartridge I know of. And it tracks the CBS test records out to 80 micrometers. So it really handles crazy grooves on a disc.
Jeez.
And it looks really nice. I mean, this is not a good picture. It looks really nice, but I'm sure it's like 50 grand. It's really expensive. That's not a lot of money for turntables. There are turntables here that were 250 grand. Again, I don't look at those. I don't care about those. This was just a group shot here. These guys have some serious technology going from them. They achieved some very impressive goals with their technology. Again, for very serious money.
And
This
serious
was-
money.
This is one of the few places, like I mentioned, where somebody's actually using a turntable that they have. This was your sound source.
Hmm.
So, yep, this is the on-wall speaker. It's also sized to mount inside a wall from Martin Logan, and it's dynamic. It's not electrostatic. There are 6-inch woofers and 3-inch mid-range, and AMTs, the folded, they call them folded motion tweeters. It's basically the Heil AMT design.
Cherry pits.
And not a huge amount of money, 45,000 a pair. And they played very loud and clean. This is if I remember right, is an Anthem integrated amp, and it's not doing crazy EQ or anything like that. These just, if they have EQ inside, it's passive, and they just achieved a good sound. in the next room was their giant monolith speaker statement, electrostatic with a subwoofer. And I didn't even go listen to that. There was a line out the door for that. I spent some time with Linkwitz Audio. I saw Frank Brenner there. And it was pretty special. This is the LX521. This is a pair of 10-inch subwoofers, but it's a dipole baffle, which means it radiates out the back as well as the front. So this shaped enclosure is to give a little path length difference between the front and the back, so you don't get total cancellation of the bass wave. And I gotta say, they played 20 hertz very loud. He played some, I think it was jazz, but it had a synth in it that was playing, he said 20 hertz, and they were shaking the room. And I was pretty impressed by that, given that it's a dipole. And on this panel is like a 7 and a 3-inch mid-range and a 1-inch tweeter facing us. And there's also a 1-inch tweeter in the back facing the back. These are digital amps that contain 4 channels or 5 channels. I think there's a channel for each of the subwoofers of ICE amps. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. They're like 120 watts per channel or segment or whatever. And over here is the, you can't see it, is the analog crossover that feeds these guys. And the whole system, a pair of speakers, a set of amps, and the crossover is 20K.
That's
So
not bad.
given that they give you the amps, that again is not a low, not a really high price. I mean,
Yeah.
20K is not sneezing money, but, and I gotta say, for simply mic things, Frank was playing performances that he knew were mic'd with like 2 mics, like jazz, some classical stuff. These things made a sound field that you can't beat. The instruments were in place and they were there, and they say palpable, you know, everybody says that. These really were champions at doing that. They just sounded great.
Question, Nick.
Yep.
They were, it looks like on that large subwoofer box that the smaller drivers are angled back at about 30 degrees toward the corner. Is that right?
Yes. The subwoofers face straight ahead into the room. They were parallel to the sides of the room, but these were maybe 20. I mean, I'm a little off. As you see, there's the distance here on the sidewall. These are turned in 20 degrees. It didn't seem to me to be quite 60. They were meeting, I would say, behind the listening area. They were like 3 seats wide and 3 seats deep, and they were focused on the back row, I would say.
Yeah, well, you want to get the corner secondary coming back to you wider and deeper than the main sound.
I think there were compromises so they could have more listeners. Frank has alluded to me that, you know, they are really very focused speakers, and, you know, kind of want to have one prime listening position seat. But, you know, by spreading them out a little bit and not quite focusing on the ears of the first seat, you get a little more area. They did a great job for what they do. I got to say, I was there on another day when Frank was not there. I had them play some heavy metal music, and they didn't recreate any ambience then. You know, I'm sure that recording is multi-mic'd and not very well done. I don't know the source of that music. I asked them to play something specifically from YouTube, but they could not. So he got it from Spotify or Qobuz or I don't know quite what, and it wasn't quite the music the version of the song that I know well. But they did not, these speakers did not bring that together. It kind of fell flat for that. But for simply recorded music, these are the champions of space. So MBL had a big room, but there was a big line. So I went to the smaller room. These are the 101s. The big room is like 2 of these stacked top to top. So there's some woofers in a cabinet here. This is a mid. This is like a low tweeter and a high tweeter. And the way these things work is there are voice coils in here. that push down on these
Oh my
segments,
God.
like segments cut of an orange. When you push down, they bow out. So these create true omnidirectional sound for all three of these radiating elements here. But the woofers are bandpass woofers, I believe. I believe these are the exits for bass, that there's not like the face of the woofer underneath or on the back or anything like that.
They're ported.
And driven by these giant monoblocks here, which you can't see. The bass, as I said, was disconnected. It didn't seem to be, bass drums seem to be in another place, and cellos and bass violins seem to be in another place. They didn't seem to form the same image that the rest of these were forming. But I mean, if you're a fan of Omni speakers, and these really are Omni, they really spread the sound around the room with all the consequences of getting full reflections from back and side walls. These are real Omni and not terribly expensive. The big ones are like 200,000 bucks. Like I said, I didn't hear those. I've heard those before, and they're the same sort of feeling about them. The bass was not quite in sync with everything else. These are some interesting speakers. There's a midwoofer here, and this is a cylindrical radiating element, and they didn't talk about how it's done, whether it's piezo or electrostatic film or PVDF, or they didn't say. This is one of the few places where they had a tape recorder, but they didn't play any tapes. All the music was streamed, and this has no subwoofer. It was kind of missing in the low bass, but it was truly Omni above 2,500 hertz, I would say. They didn't play anything that really challenged these. And I would have been interested, even though these are only like 7-inch woofers, I would be interested to see, how loud can they play and stuff like that. But they're definitely interesting. YGA stands for Yev Goem Acoustics, who's an Israeli guy, I believe, whose previous speakers were made all out of aluminum. The cabinets are all aluminum. These cones are made from a disc of aluminum, which they machine everything that's not cone-like. Like they asked Michelangelo once, how did you carve the David statue? And he says, that was easy. I started with a big block of marble and I carved away everything that wasn't David. Well, that's how these guys make these billet drivers, billet core is what they call them. But the cabinet, this is an aluminum, solid aluminum machined front, but the cabinets are now made from a cast resin. So these are cheap compared to his normal YGA series, which are like in the 150,000 buck range. And these sounded wonderful because the cabinets are really inert and these drivers are really well engineered, and this front panel is really stiff. And I was impressed as heck by these things. Only 25K a pair compared to his previous speakers, and he might make some serious coin on this. And again, in a smaller room, I found a smaller version of the Stenheim speakers. These fit in that room, and 60 grand is a lot. These are a couple 100 pounds. These are solid aluminum cabinets, and they really, the cabinets don't ring. They're really damped, and they made a really good sound. I was impressed by these. And then at night, the night before, on Friday night, there was a blues concert. And on Saturday night, there was this lady who I've been a fan of from the 1970s, where she was sort of a folk pop singer and self-deprecating and self-hurting and, love is so hard and all that kind of stuff. Well, now she's come back with a jazz album, and she played live, of course, with a Chicago local quartet who was really on the ball. They were really good, and there was sound reinforcement, and the sound reinforcement was subtle but clean, no distortion. It was really good sound reinforcement. So I really enjoyed the heck out of it. She played about an hour and a quarter. So I thought that was great. And day 3, I just looked into some weird stuff. I went back and visited my favorites, and I left at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This was Sunday, because I didn't want to miss a plane, and I wanted to have enough time to get back into the airport. So I went to see Pass Labs. This is 1,000 small signal field effect transistors mounted on 4 faces of this enclosure. There's 1,000 of them. This is a 20-watt amplifier. It's called the Beast of 1,000 FETs. Nelson Pass does things as a joke from time to time. He's decided to, let's not use a power device. Let's see what 1,000 small signal devices can do. So this was literally assembled for him by one of his interns, who spent like 2 weeks at it, I think.
And I believe these are the super rare 2SJ, I don't know, 74s or what have you. They're no longer made by Toshiba that Linear and others are trying to duplicate now. They're very collectible.
Yeah, only don't collect them from China.
That's a monoblock, right?
This is a monoblock.
You got to get 2 of those.
This might be stereo. This is not a commercial product.
Oh, well,
this is just a concept product.
All right.
So,
Can you use it for stereo, or is it just mono only? What a disappointment.
This might be a stereo. I don't remember. It might be stereo because I see these ribbon loudspeaker cables coming off 2 sides.
Okay.
But this was done as a joke. This is a reference to A Beast of 1,000 Eyes, which was a schlock horror movie in the 50s or something, black and white, I believe. And you're right, these are made out of ultra rare FETs. I tried to buy some, I got them from China, and they were all crap. I put them on a tester, and half of them didn't work, and half of them were they're supposed to be matched sets, widely divergent characteristics. And so I'll never do that.
What a match set's going for, like $30 a set or something like that. When I visited Curl, I think he said he had a Firestorm and lost most of his. And I sat there and watched him hand matching and hand selecting the ones that he had.
If you want the ultimate, yes, you match devices. That's it. And there are DIY Audio has a DIY Audio site where you can buy sometimes some of these devices or other devices for amp kits that they sell. And they will sell you 2 SJ74s and 2 SK170s for like $30, and they're hand matched. But it's a lot of money to pay. So I'm looking more to the linear devices. The only problem is there aren't many distributors for linear devices, and so they're still kind of pricey, but they look like nice equipment.
Hence, this is my interest in my comment about Quantec test equipment. Was this how Curl, back when he worked at Ampex, first discovered the 2N4401 and 4403, and his association ultimately with Mark Levinson, and the whole thing all goes back to the Quantec test equipment that typically only the manufacturers of components used. These were not used by manufacturers of audio equipment.
Yep. And this is the commercial test equipment that the commercial audio equipment rather that they sell. And this is like a super efficient Lowther. It's got that funny nose in the middle and a whizzer cone. And you need super efficiency when you only got 20 watts. So they had people come in and say, which of these is driving, the speaker? And they all sounded pretty much the same to me. Sorry to say. I just put my hand against this, and it felt a little warm, so I guessed it was this one, and it turned out to be right. But then I went and hunted down Sonus Faber, whatever. They make very big speakers. These are over 6 feet tall. There's a couple of woofers here, but I think there's a woofer that vents or ports or whatever out the bottom here, and driven by Boulder Electronics. And this is like $100,000 amp. And this is a more $190,000 cables here. And it sounded okay. not worth the kind of money. I don't know. This fell into the category of weird. I believe these were printed by a computer. And this is a tub where there's a woofer that's facing up. And this is a cover which covers a sphere, a solid sphere, around which are mounted tweeters and mid-ranges, aiming at the sphere to diffract off the sphere. Now, the only problem is that these were not functional or not set up the time I came to visit. And so I didn't get to hear them. And they look a little complex to me. All this stuff that you see and hear is the back ends of mid-ranges, dome mid-ranges and dome tweeters, that the back end is going to get in the way of the sound. I mean, I don't see any way around that. So I think you're going to get weird sound patterns out of this. And maybe these grates, whatever you want to call them, act as diffusers. But like I said, they weren't operating by the time I came past the room. So and then I went back to my favorites. And I may have mentioned that most of these places were playing jazz and pop, synth music, electronic dance was very popular. Well, I wanted some classical. Well, these guys went out and they came back 7 or 8 minutes later, and they had downloaded Beethoven's Symphony No. 3, and they put it on, and I listened. And I listened. And man, these were my favorites. Wow, they really brought the boom. So I think that
So
was
Nick,
the last.
how do you feel these Kratos compared with great speakers you've heard in the past outside the show?
I think they may have been the best. I mean, I've heard big Magnapans, I've heard big Martin Logans, I've heard, Klipschorns and Wilsons and Sonus Fabers, and this is what I like, probably because it's a line array and that kind of interaction with the room that you get.
Yeah.
And probably because they had enough woofers to produce some really deep bass. So my second,
What Beethoven recording?
I don't know the recording. It didn't have a lot of ambience, and it was not a live recording. But they didn't know. I didn't ask even the source of the. They probably got it from Tidal or Qobuz or something like that. But I didn't ask like the venue or the conductor or anything like that. Orchestra.
At the last minute, you probably couldn't be too picky.
Yeah, I mean, I took what I could get, and like I said, I was very surprised. Only 5% of the exhibitors would allow you to choose music, and less than 5% of those had any classical music. So for classical music, for me is, big scale symphonic stuff, right? I want to challenge the speakers in the room and, whatever. So, and this was my second favorite thing. It was just a very cool perspective to have on music.
Nobody played the 1812 overture conclusion with the cannons, huh?
No. I did hear fanfare.
You sat on the other side of the room and catch the woofer cone as it comes flying out.
Right. Out of their control, i.e. they didn't say, yes, we have this or whatever. They played Fanfare for a Common Man, Copeland, at the ATC SCM 100 speakers, those powered speakers that are on a diagonal, and those kicked your chest when the bass drum whacked.
Yeah,
It really did.
it's done right. It's
But
pretty
they
impressive piece.
They missed the bass below that, I would say.
Mm.
Ported speakers, what are you going to do?
Yep.
So these are things that tickle my interest. I didn't see an FM tuner anywhere. I saw a couple of fancy tape decks, but nobody played tapes. In the record room, there was over 10,000 records for sale. Yeah, there was 3 big dealers, each had like 10 to 15 tables covered with boxes of LPs. And Some of them were specialist pressings. You know, the latest thing that cost $200-300 for a record. But quite a few were just, you know, old records. A lot of turntables on display, but maybe 10 were being used as sources. There were no bass traps, no significant acoustic treatments in the exhibitor rooms. First reflection point here and there. Otherwise, frequently some curtains around the room, or room curtains closed over the windows, which would have been reflective glass, you know. There was an entire room, auditorium, devoted to headphones and headphone amps. A lot of people in there. So it's not my thing. A lot of hyper expensive cables in use. Like I said, a couple $100,000, and I just go nuts over that. You know, who needs that? You don't, that's all fairy dust. It's not for real. There were 7,600 attendees. AXPONA is one of the few high-end audio shows that's left. There may be the NEW show coming back in California, but I think they've lost, a couple of the organizers have died, you know, a few years ago and then a year ago. And I don't know if anybody's going to pick it up. This was definitely focused on 2-channel audio. And AXPONA 2023 is already planned for Chicago, and there may be one in New York. I don't know if it's the same organization, whether it's a traveling show or what. I would hope, you know, if they do one in New York, they'll have different exhibits and stuff like that. But I mean, the core is probably going to be the same. I just hope it's in a good location, as good as the Renaissance was. And that's it. Yay! Boo! What?
Very dark. Great presentation, Nick. Thank you.
What
Yes.
does it cost to attend, Nick?
The ticket, the 3-day ticket, you could buy a 1-day, 2-day, 3-day ticket. 3-day ticket is like $50. I stayed at the Hyatt Regency, which is $129 a night. Rooms at the Renaissance, it turned out, stayed available until just before the show. Those are like $179 a night. I'm not sure if I would have wanted to stay there, like I said, next to exhibitors and stuff like that, but not New York prices for sure. The people were real nice. I got ripped off by the cab. I almost got ripped off by Uber. I got to the airport and I decided I'm going to take a taxi cab. And I go out to the cab stand, and there's a placard that says, among other destinations, Schaumburg, $75. So, okay. And the cab jockey there says, yeah, we charge 1.5 times the meter. And I think, I don't understand why you're doing that. So I think I'll go check out Uber. So I fire up my Uber app and it says $35. I say, that's for me. It turns out I had to walk to a different terminal. So I walked to this different terminal, and by that time, Uber was saying $89.
Oh.
So I didn't know this. Uber charges by the demand or whatever.
Yeah.
So I walk back to the cab stand, get in the cab, and I figure, okay, $75, you know.
Jeez.
So he starts driving and he's chatting me up, and he knows where the place is. And so he's going down a couple highways. Schaumburg is 25 miles, something like that, from the Chicago O'Hare. And so he starts driving down these small streets, and he's like in this development, and he's driving in this development for like 5 minutes, and then it's like 10 minutes. And I decide he's lost. And, you know, he doesn't have it. He fires up his phone and he fires up some GPS application on it. And, you know, I don't know why you wouldn't drive, I mean, with a GPS all the time, but so he's driving around, and finally it takes them to a Hyatt, but it's not my Hyatt, it's something else. So he goes inside to ask them, and he comes out after 2 minutes, says, I know where it is. And so he drives a few blocks and drops me at the Hyatt Regency. He says $75. That was the meter fare, and I was afraid he was going to charge me 150% of that. But I said, hey man, you were lost. You wasted my time at least 10 minutes. You know, I'm not going to pay So he charged me $75 and I was glad to walk away from that, but that was not a great experience. I was maddened by the fact that Uber has a dynamic pricing policy that they never discussed this. I mean, I've never used Uber before, but you know,
They've had that for years since the beginning. It's surge pricing, they call it. Yeah.
that's a good name.
Yeah, I was shocked at an airport recently that it was much more expensive than regular taxis. It used to be the opposite. So
Yeah.
you always have to check now.
That's what I had heard, but my
Yeah,
experience.
my
I
last
think there are far
experience.
fewer drivers and that's just the situation right now.
Next time, take the train.
I don't know if there is a train from there. I mean, you know, I wanted to get into a
Yeah,
car.
probably not.
Sounds like a great show. Now, what you presented 75 slides. What proportion of all the exhibitors do you feel that was? Was this just scratching the surface of the things that caught your attention, or is this pretty thorough, do you think?
I would say it was between a third and a half of all the exhibits. When I went in, I wanted to sit down and listen for 10 minutes, maybe more. And like I said, I didn't go into every room. A couple like Martin Logan Monoliths had a very long line out the door and I wasn't going to wait. And, you know, some I go walk by the room and it doesn't sound very good. So, you know, like I said,
Fair enough.
Somewhat less than half, I would say.
And besides the private ellipse and the other one that you like so much, that line array, were there any others that you went back to because you thought they were worth revisiting?
Oh yeah, I went back to the ATC speakers several times. I went to the Focal twice. I went back to the Cliffs Jubilee twice. You know, I checked them out again. The rooms had different numbers of people in them, and I wanted to see if my reaction to them would change. And basically, not very much. You know, I pretty much got my impression on the first day. You know, like that. I sort of tried to hit all the highlights and the things people tipped me off to go check. But there were bunches of things that I went to see that I didn't put up a picture and report on. Like I went to Matasound Components and Parts Express and spent some time looking at their woofers and, you know, talking about their designs and stuff like that. You know, a bunch of lesser, maybe more esoteric kind of little things I went to visit. Jansen was there demonstrating these a new version of the speaker that he demonstrated at Goldwater's. It has a tweeter on the side, as maybe it's a mid. Yeah, it's a mid tweeter on the side as well. It's tweeter on the back and knobs to control the level. So he again is allowing you to dial in the sound power in the room that you want. And they sounded really great. They played really loud. You know, it's kind of surprising for electrostatic, but he knows how to do it. I mean, so there was a lot of good stuff. There's several things I did not report on, you know.
Great.
So that's it. I don't think I'm not sure I'm going to go next year. I mean, I don't expect anything significantly, hugely new to come up that would be, wow, I got to go hear that. But we'll see.
Looks like a fun event, though. I haven't been to one of these in years, and they're always great fun.
Yeah, it was nice. It was well organized. People were friendly, had some good food. A good time was had by all.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot less stressful than CES.
Oh, yes. This, I could manage what I wanted to manage, but at CES, I was dog tired at the end of the first day, at the end of the second day, and there was too much. There's just too much at CES.
Are there enough customers for these products? Some of these things, like that speaker that looked like a big C clamp, the black thing. I want to know who buys these. I want to meet them. I don't get it. I mean, I guess you just have to sell one and you made a year's salary probably.
Or you
But
got a bridge to sell? Is that your point, John?
yeah, basically, I see these things and I went, I would love to see their inventory and I would like to see their sales list and their receipts. Who buys these and who do they sell to?
A friend of mine was in this business for a while and sold in very small quantities. And it was mostly word of mouth that caused these things to sell because, yeah, they're striking, you know. So, like I said, very small quantities. So, you know, small.
Well, at price, you don't have to sell many. So that's, you know,
It's a
Well,
labor of
that's the
love.
idea.
I think people get into these things. And
they must be those oligarchs with their $1 billion yachts that are buying these, I guess.
Yeah.
dentists.
Yeah, they're,
My concern with these products is serviceability down the road. You know,
Yeah.
this is the thing I do a lot of is repairing amplifiers and so forth. And so when you start looking at discontinuation of parts and products, and some of the components you can't get replacements for, and so people will slap in some MJ series output transistor with a narrower bandwidth and some old Sansui amp that had, you know, incredible slew rate and so forth, and you'll never get it to meet the original factory spec with these other devices. So my recommendation, anybody, if they're going to go buy one of these, go buy an extra one or buy spare parts. Get the names and phone numbers of all the employees so that you've got somebody to contact, and hopefully, you know, they're not senior citizens like most of us who probably aren't going to be around in 20 years. You know,
Fly-by-night audio.
Yeah. That's a good point.
yeah, well, some of these parts have disappeared, but there have been quite a few new parts that come out that really have impressive specs. I mean, the FT, the transition frequency on current production audio power transistors is 50 or 60 megahertz now.
right? So the old TO3s, Toshiba, Sanken, NEC, they don't make them anymore. And of the on semi, there's only 13 that they make, and none of them has an FT greater than 4 or 5. And that's generally what most service guys are doing, is just slapping those suckers in.
Yeah,
So,
well, there are good output transistors out there.
right.
You know, once again, don't buy them from China, buy them from a real distributor. I've been burnt that way.
Yeah, it's
But
all
yeah.
flat pack plastic, you know, transistors now.
The Sankens, the flat pack ring emitter transistors. Yeah, you can't get those anymore.
The old VFETs, you know, some of that stuff, you know, I don't play with those, but there's certainly collectability now among those things.
Yep. And Nelson Pass is one who's leading the charge in exploring those kind of things. These boutique transistors. Again, given their specs and their capabilities, they're kind of low power stuff, which is not so much of interest to me, but they're very, very tube-like characteristics, you know. Hey, if that's what you like.
Hell, it may wind up that the only thing you can find are tubes.
Well, there's a question of tubes now because Russia makes most of the
Yeah.
tubes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Sovtek tubes are hard
Oh,
to
good
find.
point. Oh, are they, is there a shortage now of like 6SN7s?
There
I
is-
was only recently aware that Western Electric, you know, the 300Bs, I guess, had been in production for some time, and now they're exploring making 12AX7s and so forth. So,
Yeah, Western Electric Company is. They're back,
right.
which is a good thing. The deal on Soviet tubes, as far as I understand, this comes out of Stereophile, is everybody was afraid for a while. And then Russia decided it was only transmitting tubes that were going to be blocked. But a lot of dealers went and bought up pretty much the whole supply that they could find, creating a manufacturing shortage. And they're holding back, the distributors are holding back the tubes for maybe the higher prices they command now. And they are commanding fierce prices.
Really?
So, Nick, when you were there, did you see, and I'm not a big fan of them other than potentially using them for subwoofer amps, but Class D amplifiers, and did you see any of these gallium nitride, transistors that now, that make these things like 96% efficient? Did you see any of that stuff at the show?
No, I did not. My favorite semiconductor company was International Rectifier, which was acquired by, I don't remember. And they used to make all the MOSFETs that were used in switching amps. And they developed the new gallium nitride MOSFETs. And they were not present. And one of the reasons I like them is they have sort of a DIY cult status in that several of their parts for Class D or digital audio are still through-hole mounting, which means you can buy integrated circuits that have legs that will stick through a board that you can make yourself, as opposed to surface mount. So you can make demonstrator boards, and they sell demonstrator boards, but they're expensive. Demonstrator boards with their latest circuits and their latest gallium devices, and come up with some decent amps. But in my finding, Class D amps do not match analog amps in the funny sort of way. The Class D amps seem to be rated at a certain amount of power at a kind of high distortion into 8 ohms, and they really fold if you go below 8 ohms, and the distortion goes crazy. And so I think a lot of speaker impedances vary over the audio band, and that digital amps have actually trouble coping with that at anything but the lowest powers. So
IR has been bought up by Infineon Technologies.
that's the one.
I just looked it up.
Yeah, I get bulletins from Infineon about new products, and I follow that because those guys do interesting stuff. But the commercial versions of digital amps, unless it, or maybe I should say Class D, unless you're spending lots of money, seem to have these quirks at, their non 1 point best operating point, 8 ohm point. And I don't know, we're going to ask Leo Asianstat of Orchard Audio, I believe, to come back and demonstrate his latest version of his digital amps, which do feature these gallium nitride transistors. He loves them, and he thinks that that's the way to go. But his Class D amps are $1,000 a channel, I think. And that's, no small potatoes. And I want to see what they do in the different impedances and, under non-ideal operating conditions. But hopefully we'll see.
So with an audio precision system 2722, and you have an AES-17, brick wall filter, and additionally they suggest you buy a AUX 0025. How exactly are you measuring harmonics at 20K when the second and third harmonic when you chop it off?
I know.
Right? So the front end gets overdriven, I guess, pretty easily in this, this audio precision system 2722 as an example. So again, I'm wondering how people are measuring those harmonics.
Yeah, and with those harmonics, you don't have those filters on the output of your amp going to your tweeters,
Exactly.
So your tweeters are seeing, first of all, screwy loads at those kind of frequencies, and are seeing a few volts anyways of RF or mid-frequency, I don't know what you want to call it, but above 20 kilohertz and below a megahertz. And, that's not doing them any good. I'm sorry. I wonder how they react to that. I don't know. The measurements are always screwy. If you look at the distortion curves, they have steps in them. And I can't explain why a curve, which in an analog amp is going to be smooth and continuous, why these digital amps have steps where the distortion all of a sudden jumps up to 10 times as much as it was, just, 5 hertz the other way. I'd like to know what's going on. I'd like to sit down and give these things a good listen. And hopefully we're going to get to do that. No, I didn't see anything. I mean, most subwoofers are Class D. The SVS subwoofer company, now trying to be a speaker company, was there, and I spent some time with them. And they demonstrated their little sub with a pair of 6-inch woofers, I think. And they played for about 7 or 8 seconds, some huge 20 hertz room shaking tone, but that was all they played. And I don't know if that thing was smoking after that, or whether it was dead, or, you know, whether they had to reload another one in there. Yeah, it makes huge, impressive amounts of bass for a short period of time, but was it musical with real stuff? I didn't get to hear anything like that. They moved
What's
on.
that 20 hertz? But what's that, 56.2 feet, something like that? Do you have that body diagonal? And you had some pretty big rooms, so maybe you could actually, you know, realize the full wavelength.
This was in a small, I don't know what to call them. It's not an exhibit. It's an exhibitor room, but it's not a big ballroom. These are maybe 15 by 20 rooms, 15 feet by 20 foot rooms, you know, 20 feet deep, coming from the door all the way to the glass windows in the wall, and 15 feet. And theirs, if I remember right, still had the chest of drawers in it, and the little subwoofer was tucked in on the floor against the wall, against this chest of drawers, forming a 2 foot deep, I gotta say, corner, which is not a much help for that. But yeah, they were playing real 20 hertz, and they played it real loud for 6, 7, 8 seconds, and then they moved on to a different subwoofer. And, you know, that other subwoofer, much bigger, and sounded fine too. Again, a very short stint, and then they moved on to their speakers, which they're trying to become a speaker company now. So floor standing speakers and small bookshelf speakers, and, you know, I'm sure most of the subwoofers are Class D. Most of them are competent. It's a much more limited load when you're only going to do up to 100 hertz or 80 hertz or something like that. And you get.
I remember a few years back seeing a video with Bascom King with his BHK series that he was making, the 250 and whatnot. And he described the tube front end, and then he had some MOSFET outputs, but he was going quasi-comp because he said the current MOSFET technology did not have very good PNPs, so he went quasi-comp. Those MOSFETs that were made in the old days that apparently aren't available anymore, somehow he wasn't, you know, quite happy with the current trend of PNP MOSFETs. Do you know if they've improved?
Yes, I can only speak to the IR audio. They're still made by Infineon, but the IR audio age of devices, the numbers like a IRF 244 in theory would match with an IRFP 9244, but that was a poor match. The gate capacitance was very different, and the gain, the modes were different, and it turned out that the 244 was a much better match than the 9245. And once people caught on to that, the symmetry of the amps was much closer and a much better, they made a much better sound and product. So that's what I ended up doing. I built some Nelson Pass Class A MOSFET amps with like 12 Ps and 12 Ns in each channel, and that's how I ended up doing a better matching than just the numeric match or the recommended match.
So
Yeah.
have you gone to any burning amp stuff out there?
No. I've never done that. All that stuff happens in California, which, you know, it's a long distance to go. The burning amps, the amp camps, and the other I don't know, semi-humorous, let me say, amplifier creating seminars that Nelson hosts are interesting, but they tend to be towards single-ended designs and kind of lower power designs, and they're not quite as applicable to what I'm driving with them, which tend to be sort of inefficient speakers, and I need more power. So no, I'd like to go for the entertainment value, but I have not been. Anybody else?
So I was going to say, since we were mentioning Nelson, there's a video of him discussing DC offset, and he did some measurements with some loudspeakers. This is the most recent burning amp, and he showed some distortion numbers. And by actually applying a DC offset, he claims better performance of his loudspeakers. Is there any consideration of this? Has anybody talked about this much?
It is quite possible. If you the not audiophile voice, audio review. Darn, there's a current sort of DIY audio magazine whose name escapes me.
Like Audio Express or something, or
that's it, Audio Express, where they do a review or an analysis of a speaker driver. And the interesting thing is they plot BL curves for the speaker, and the BL curves show you how much force you get out of the speaker depending on the displacement of the cone from center. Okay, and you look at these, and the BL curves are not symmetric going in versus going out, and there are slight offsets to where the curves start to rise. So if you look at that, you could see that if you chose a different center point than what the driver is delivered at, then you can,
or it's naturally at,
what is naturally at rest at, you can minimize the distortion a little bit. How much you can achieve with that, I don't know. It may be it's significant at lower levels and maybe not so much at higher levels. But if you look at those curves, you see some strange things that you say, how or why are loudspeaker manufacturers delivering speakers that have this offset or these steps or this kind of weird non-symmetrical shape to the curves? Why is that? And it may be that when you tune a DC offset to it, you can reduce some kinds of distortion.
Right. So a partner of mine that I had many years ago who built PA systems, and we had a studio together, who was 14 years my senior and who was my mentor. He and I had a discussion about these kinds of things, and the timing of Nelson's video was perfect because we was talking about Dart Zeal amps with like 1% distortion and how popular they were, and he says, well, they've got this DC offset, and it's intentional. And I started thinking about the loudspeaker situation. I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. And virtually a couple of days later, I see this video I forwarded off to my friend, and we have a subsequent nice long conversation about this. He also built.
You mean a DC offset that was available to be adjusted by the user?
I don't know if it's adjusted or if it's fixed. I don't possess one. I've not played with one of these ones. There's another school of people out there who don't like feedback or taking care of their open loop gain and closing feedback and this sort of stuff. And so there's a group of people who don't mind these 1% distortion amplifiers. And so
when you say DC offset, I'm not clear. Not DC at the outputs.
Yes.
You can't possibly mean that.
Yeah.
So the amplifier is designed to emit DC in the output signal to go to your speakers?
It has some DC. I mean, so their design goal wasn't to obtain 0 millivolts DC offset. It was to have 10 or 50 millivolts or something, right?
Well,
I mean, yeah, but isn't that bad for speakers?
Well, that's why Nick and I. This is why I'm bringing this up.
Not
is Nelson has a video talking about this.
But in very small quantities, it doesn't seem to be harmful. If that's your.
It seems to actually improve the distortion by applying whether it be a negative or positive offset, because your speakers aren't able to move the same distance both in and out. Right? They're not the way they are mechanically centered in the manufacturing process is not equal. Does that make sense? Or is that?
Yeah, well, no, it makes sense to me. It would only affect the woofers, of course, but
right.
It would be slightly shifted off of center would be the effect.
Yeah.
If they can dissipate the heat, they can handle it. I mean,
sure.
Millivolt isn't a big deal. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, amps usually have a differential input. And so you got two transistors competing to find a settling point where they sort of match and they're sort of forced to match by the components around them and stuff like that. But there are offsets. There are offsets in the input potentials at the two bases or the two junctions or gates or whatever, and multiplied by the gain through, that determines your offset at the output. So there's always millivolts of offset. And the amps may have a knob to adjust the bias and a knob to adjust the offset, but they drift. I mean, I have never achieved 10 millivolts of offset. On an average case, you know, following it for a while, 10 mils, I was really happy with that.
That's really good. All right. Yeah, it hasn't occurred to me to measure this on my amplifier. It might be shocking to find that there's actually quite a bit of DC there, but hopefully.
Our amplifiers are a few millivolts. We set them to less than a millivolt usually.
Okay.
In any case, we had an offset on the amplifier. You offset it. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but you know, anything I ever built had some drift to it, even with matched pair, you know, common case transistors, you know, two in a case. It, you know, the best I ever did was about 10 millivolts and it drifted a little bit. And that's okay because that's a negligible amount of power. I'm not going to worry about that. Of course, tube amps are crowing because they have no DC at the output. So they shouldn't, except for a Macintosh amp, which if it was seriously imbalanced through the autoformer, you will get DC at the output. You'll be dissipating a lot of heat in that autoformer, but you'll get some DC.
That's funny. Hey, there were no monkey coffin speakers that I can recall from your presentation, which used to be a very popular format. And I didn't see any. Was that because you shunned those rooms or have they gone out of favor?
Well, I know the parlance monkey coffin. I mean, the Paradigm speakers, you could put a monkey in there.
Okay.
But, you know, the speakers tend to be a little more graceful now, a little narrower, a little taller, a little deeper to achieve the volume that, you know, you want to base loading. I didn't see anything I would consider an out and out monkey coffin. And, you know, for high end stuff, you got to realize it's going to produce larger devices than smaller, right? So the speakers are going to tend to be bigger.
So it's really oriented towards that crowd.
I'd say so. Yeah. I mean, I
guess if you don't have stores that have to sell the you know, the stuff that ordinary people buy for their living rooms, then this is what you guys shows. This is really oriented towards this ultra high-end stuff that isn't supported by a mainstream product line.
Right. But a lot of these manufacturers have a mainstream product line, you know, that they sell to the Best Buys and whatever. So
all right. Just not part of the show.
Not so much. Not so much. They tend to want to present their high end, their best pieces, you know.
It's couture.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, Nick, I think you did a great job and I appreciate the time you put into your presentation.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Nick.
Fun.
nothing else. It's been an hour and 20 minutes to
And nobody's fallen asleep yet.
Good.
So is that it or what do we say?
That's it for me.
Okay, is that it? You want to close this out, Ken?
Sure.
Will there be a video of this available later online someplace?
Well, I can answer the question. Yes, we've recorded this. And so we have the technical capability of giving you a copy if you'd like, but I don't know if it's going to be hosted. Maybe David knows the answer to that.
Ken, I was going to host this. I just need to figure out how to work it. David Hadaway sent me the files, and you know better than I do, I guess, but I got a whole bunch of files which were fragments of the recording. So you get like the text chat in one, looks like different, in other words, it's fragmented. It's like a puzzle. So there's not one clean, easy video to post, it appears.
I think Well, if I recall correctly, there should be at least one huge video file, the biggest
Yeah.
one. That's the one you want. And then there are all these complementary pieces like the chat and so on, which don't really fit in the video, and that's why they're separated out. And then there may be an audio only version and perhaps a low res and a high res. So you have to check, but the biggest one is going to be the main recording.
Okay, because I have the means to host them. I just need to figure out the means to present it properly so someone going there will know what to click on and sort of write a little guide or something to what they're getting. So I'll work on that some more, and I'll let everybody know when it's posted. I'll play with it a little bit and see what I can come up with too. But I do have some of the previous meetings as it is now, and I just got to see out of the whole mishmash of what I have, what they are, and kind of make it look pretty. So.
Where do these things go to see them on YouTube?
Well, they certainly can be put there. Right now, I was hosting them on my online service. I just give somebody a link to it, and they can see it. They can go to it that way, or I can probably put up a web page and it would direct them to those that I'm hosting on, a OneDrive site with plenty of storage.
At this point, there's no plans to put it on YouTube.
Yeah, no, I think we decided we were going to offer this to the members as one of the perks. So do we want to make them public? I don't think so. I think we decided we just want our members to be able to access them. Is that correct?
You can configure a YouTube posting to be shared only with a limited group of people, group.
Yeah, because I have a YouTube account that I post my videos on. I know you can set them private or you can set them public as long as someone has a link they can see it.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So it's possible, I think, to achieve your goal to get it to the group members without making it publicly visible.
Yeah,
it couldn't be searched for example, that kind of thing. You can set that up, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I'll put them on YouTube instead of, there's a couple of ways I can go, but the main thing is just making it so people understand what they're seeing and presentable. So I'll work on either one of those two ways and go from there. Probably the YouTube might be the way to go. Yeah, okay.
We also have a Facebook Boston Audio Society account, which, has been used in recent times. I actually wouldn't have been able to tell you if there was one, but there is, I checked.
Yeah, personally, if Facebook went away, I'd be happy. But I mean,
yeah. Well, I know what I'm aware of that feeling.
Yeah.
But if our purpose of having this website that would host discussions and so on is at least in part to get new members, having the Facebook presence and building it up, with announcements and informative stuff could build more awareness and membership for the club, especially for the right now we're still doing Zoom meetings, I suppose, for pandemic reasons, but I think there's also a larger audience that we reach worldwide with the Zoom meetings, and at least having those as part of our agenda could be a way to serve members that are further away and not just be Boston local.
Yeah, well, the links can certainly be on Facebook, and they'll be served out of YouTube because YouTube give you a nice presentation, and they can be comments there also. So it's two places. It would put them in both and give exposure that way to both. The last I went on our Facebook page, that was probably a year and a half ago. I didn't think there was a way to post on it. It seemed like it was closed. I know we're discussing that issue. I could be wrong. I haven't been there for a while. Do you guys know?
Yeah, I was on there recently.
And is it open to anybody can post on it?
I think so, because I'm not officially a Boston Audio Society member yet. Once this pandemic was over, I certainly hope that we can get together and meet, but it sounds like I should just go ahead and contribute right now.
Yeah, in the Boston Audio Society website, there's a membership form there, and just fill it out and send it in and put you on the list.
I bought the disc set a couple of years ago when I moved out here to Connecticut. And I found that I went through every issue of the speaker. It's very informative. I mean, stuff, it wasn't biased. It didn't have advertising. There's some things in there that I can't find anywhere else.
Oh, it's a great journal.
And
It's great.
yes.
Yeah.
So I love it. And I've told a lot of people, just spend the $120 or whatever. It's worth it.
Well, it's not even that. Oh, that's not even that much money. The membership's what, $50 now, $65. How much is it, David?
50.
But the discs are additional, of course.
Just an additional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much. Take care.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you, Nick. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Bye.
Take care, guys.